Hello there, everyone. How you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going into r/ malicious compliance, where the revenge is just doing what you're told. If you enjoy, like and subscribe, leave a comment down below. And without further ado, let's get started, shall we? For our first story we've got, Tell Us the Right Time. For many years, my family would take trips with other family members. All of these trips had one thing in common. My aunt, uncle, and cousins would be late for everything. This used to really irritate my parents, who are really punctual, and a lot more kids to organize. There's 4 of us, compared to my 2 cousins. By mutual agreement, any other family involved in these outings decided to go along with my parents and give aunt and uncle the wrong time. For example, if an event started at 11 a.m., they'd be told 10 a.m. And this was pretty effective until the aunts and uncles started to realize they were being given the wrong time. I believe other family members explained why that was, and that they were fed up with always waiting on them or being late. Self-awareness was not being very apparent that they were the issue. It was decided by them that it wasn't their fault, and they told my parents, "Give us the right time from now on and you'll see we aren't the problem." My parents, especially my mum, hates the idea of people missing out on something, but is also prepared to let the natural consequences occur if it's not too harsh. The very next week, we had a day trip booked on a ferry. This was something we did once a year, over to the UK, and back in one day. Fondly known as a booze cruise, back in the day due to the opportunity to purchase cheap alcohol. Kids would explore the ship, and when we docked, raid the pick and mix Wickworths, and buy confection that we couldn't get at home. It was something everyone looked forward to, a lot. What can I say? It was the early 90s. With the best will in the world, the ferry waits for no man. So it was such a sad day for 4 people who were told the ferry left at 8 a.m. sharp, the correct time, and who arrived at 8:30 to see a small ferry-shaped speck in the distance, heading towards the UK. Sadly, it didn't make them any more punctual after that, but they were always told the correct time as requested, and if they were late, we didn't wait anymore. For months, whenever we'd see them after that, my parents used to cheerily wave and say, "Very nice to meet you." Google it. It took 2 minutes. So, I was working for a startup firm. The firm is related to hydrogen production, and I had this task of finding suppliers who would be willing to build us a prototype scale hydrogen separator from syngas. Now, the technology needed I'll call PHF, porous hollow fibers, and is a very highly researched technology. And almost any string that you search, you're going to come across tons and tons of research papers on the topic. I did, of course, use a variety of tricks for efficiency in filtering results, and so the manager to find some sources. It did take me more than a day or 2 of filtering through sites to find reliable sources. Now, besides me, there was this other senior PhD professor who was also helping with the task. He told my boss there is this site, go check it out, and I was given the recording of that phone to follow it up. And for the love of God, I couldn't decipher the name of that firm that our PhD guy was talking about. I asked my boss very nicely what I'm overhearing is this John firm. But no matter the type of string I search, I cannot find something relevant to what we need. My boss eventually caved in, talking to the professor again, and got the name of it, in text this time. Now, the site was Johnson Matthey, and if you are familiar with that site, it's mainly a catalyst manufacturing site, I believe. And besides that, it has tons of scholarly article reviews. I had already gone through that site and knew there was nothing but a paper about the tech we were looking for. So I told my boss that this is a research site, and they don't sell products like that. At most, I can find tons of catalysts on it, and that is all. But my boss assured me that he's a PhD and he knows better, and I should just go look. I spent more than 2 hours on that site and looked up every single reference to hydrogen separator and fibers, and eventually told my boss the same thing, that this is not what the site is for. So next day when I come to the office, my boss starts sending me telegram messages and a screen notification reading it. The boss sends link, and then Google is free. It took me 2 minutes. I read that from the screen notification, rolled my eyes, gave it 5 minutes, and then tabbed into the links to read through. Unfortunately, boss edited out the message. It took me 2 minutes, but I know boss had sent it earlier. So I go through my boss's link, and I kid you not. The first link was about cars, the second link is about catalysts, and the third link was about a rooftop firm that uses a sort of membrane. And just like the amazing employee I am, I took the next 3 hours of my time taking notes on everything that was on those sites, making a report, and then telling my boss that, hey, so I spent some time on those websites you sent me. Website A was about insert subject here. Website B was about insert subject here. And after my report was over, I have very diligently viewed the sites that you forwarded me. But as I reported earlier, I could not find any relevance to what we are looking for. However, if you want me to further pursue it, I can write them an email to inquire too. The sources that I have found have already been verified for possessing the tech that we are looking for. Sadly, while searching takes a click, filtering the results is the real work. Even though my boss person still made the email Johnson Matthew, and I forwarded their confused reply back to my boss, it still felt good to see how my boss's 2 minutes worked out. And boss's passive aggressiveness grew, and I just had to quit before I sunk to the same level. The only time I've ever heard of somebody getting in trouble for doing more than required. Many years ago, I worked at a company that manufactured medical and scientific testing machines. Think shakers, small centrifuges, and so on. I originally started there as a machinist until I hurt my knee at work. 8 years and 5 surgeries later, it's still not fixed. After my injury, I switched over to the assembly side because that was more accommodating for my new limitations. Long story short, I was very good at my job, coming up with new ways to streamline several processes, new ways to assemble various things quicker than before, generally doing more work than my job description called for, and even having the temerity to prove the engineers wrong on multiple occasions. With everything I could do, I knew it would require the company to hire at least 3 people to replace me should I leave. It was announced one day that the assembly manager was leaving the job, and anyone who was interested could apply for it, with the promise that inside personnel wouldn't have inside track over outside applicants. I put together my resume and went for it. The son-in-law of the company's owner was doing the interviews, which I aced. But I didn't get the job. No hard feelings, I just went back to doing what I had been doing. Well, as it turned out, they hired a friend of the owner's son-in-law as the new assistant manager. Well, so much for that inside track, huh? But it seemed to me, as well as my coworkers, that we weren't even on the same race course. But whatever. I could deal with it. I don't know what that guy's previous work experience was, but it became abundantly clear very early on that he was out of his depth. He had no clue why and how things were done the way they were. But he decided a couple weeks after his hiring that he was going to change everything about the assembly area. One of the things he decided were that we were no longer allowed to exceed the number of machines assembled per day. nor were we permitted to skip over machines to get to others, regardless of the issue. Engineering issues, bad parts, wrong parts from the warehouse, so on. Some of those parts came from the machine's shop side, but many from outside companies too. But we also weren't allowed to stand around waiting for new parts from the warehouse. We couldn't even get with the warehouse personnel to help find the parts needed, or help them get the parts into our assembly area. No more doing more became our mantra. Productivity and quality plummeted. Needless to say, none of the assembly team was happy in the slightest. I tried, I really did. But I have issues with not doing things to the best of my ability. I also have issues with not being able to fill my workday with work. You know, what I'm being paid for? I would be the absolute worst person to ask about quiet quitting. A few months into the new assistant manager's tenure, my station was at a standstill due to an engineering problem with a new variant of a machine. I could practically build blindfolded. I had 4 to 5 college-educated engineers crowding my station, attempting to figure out a problem that arose only after the machine was fully assembled, which I explained exactly how it could be fixed with minimal effort, by the way. And I was correct, but, well, that's a different story. While waiting for the engineers to come to the same conclusion as me, they did eventually, I went over to the warehouse man responsible for pulling the parts I needed to assemble it, and asked him to switch over to a different machine I was going to build. The assistant manager happened to wander over just then and asked what I was doing. I explained the situation with the engineers and that I was currently unable to work on those machines. And rather than standing there looking lazy, I was trying to get a jump start on other machines I needed to build that day. At no point did I get sarcastic, which is my normal mode of communication, or mean that I was flippant in any way whatsoever. I was merely trying to get some work done that we both knew needed to get done. He starts loudly berating me in front of the entire shop, both the assembly area and the machine shop, specifically saying, "You're not allowed to do more than what I tell you to do, and in the order I tell you to do it." I placated him as best I could, and we went back to my work area, which was still overrun with engineers, and settled down for a long wait. Cue the MC, because I didn't work on another machine for the rest of the day. Not because I didn't want to, because I was told I wasn't allowed. A couple of hours later, I was called into the assistant manager's office for a meeting. I was expecting another stern talking to, which I could handle. Being ex-military, I'd grown accustomed to being chewed out by people who didn't know how to do the job I was doing. What I was not accustomed to was getting a write-up for trying to do my job, especially since the official reason was insubordination. The assistant manager didn't even have the courage to do it himself. He foisted it off my immediate supervisor, who wasn't involved in the prior situation, and had no idea what happened earlier. I think he was busy putting out a different fire. When he asked what happened that justified my first and only write-up in the 2.5 years I'd worked for the company, I explained it to my supervisor, and all he could do was shake his head in disbelief. He was a good supervisor, at least when it came to getting the best out of most people, but he also wasn't really known for rocking the boat to stick up for his people. That said, he tried to get me to sign it. I refused because I obviously disagreed. He said he understood, but he'd have to talk to assistant manager about it, and that did not go well. I could hear the yelling half a building away, despite the machinery running. Once again, I was called into the assistant manager's office, but this time I was now facing the assistant manager. He immediately started yelling at me again, but not just about the earlier incident. Now he wanted to know why I hadn't built the day's allotment of machines. I coolly reminded him that not only there was an engineering problem with the machines I was supposed to build, he told me not to work on any other machines, and to do so was insubordination, as he so callously put in the write-up. Then he asked me if I was going to sign the write-up. Once again, I refused. I don't think it's right or fair to be reprimanded for doing my job. If you don't like it, he said through clenched teeth, find another job. I can find 1,000 people who can do that job. I never said otherwise, jackass. I was fed up now and refused to tamp down my anger any longer. But you'll need at least 3 people to do everything I can do as easily and as well as I can. Good luck with that. I left him standing there, completely flustered, went to my work area to gather my personal stuff, walked over to my supervisor. I informed him that I was going home and would like to use my accrued paid time off and vacation for the next 2 weeks. He told me it was no problem, and as he was approving my request, I let him know that I was also giving my 2-week notice and wouldn't be back. He shook my hand and wished me well in my future endeavors. I did the same and left. I got to leave on my terms, and though my son, who always worked there as well as various friends I made while working there, I did learn the company had to hire no less than 5 people to replace me and my expertise. I also got the last laugh because I'm pretty sure assistant manager got fired a couple of years later for various reasons, not least of which was the lagging productivity and his driving a mass exodus of the best personnel in the assembly area. You get what you asked for. So, I've been working for this huge pharmaceutical manufacturing company for 5 years, and I have never had a write-up. In July, they changed the attendance policy. Our managers and supervisors came around and apologized for relaying the incorrect information about the new leave policy. At the end of August, early September, everything that could go wrong went wrong. I got into an accident and didn't have a car around the last week of August. First week of September, my pipes under my house broke, and I had no water for 2 days. And then at the end of September, I was at work and got a migraine so bad, I got physically sick and asked permission to leave work, which is an excused absence, otherwise I'd be getting written up for job abandonment. Normally, I just suffer through my migraines. First, with the new policy, although we get sick time, it is considered unexcused if we take it, regardless of why we took it. Secondly, our sick policy states that if you are sick, you have to leave immediately. We make intravenous meds. So all this happened in September. I walk into work the first week of November to a write-up. I asked my boss, who literally just started the job 30 days before, what it was for, and he said HR told him to give it to me. So I asked my manager, and she says it's because my absences are considered a pattern. I also asked what the statute of limitations was because in October I didn't miss a single day of work, but got wrote up in November for August. Anyways, I asked how emergency can be patterns, and she had no answer. I set up a meeting with HR and she cancels on me on my day off. I'm not salary, I don't check my email on off days. I only work 14 to 15 days a month. Keep in mind I had to rearrange my schedule to even make the meeting. I ask for another meeting and that she can call or text so that I can get it, whether or not I work that day. And HR sets a date and then cancels it almost immediately again. At this point, I'm angry because I literally sent an email with 8 questions about the new policy I needed clarified, but HR refused to reply in an email. Anyways, per the policy, the only excused absences outside of planned vacation is FMLA. So I contacted my doctor and put down every current health issue I'm dealing with, and get granted 5 days a month for intermittent leave for the next year. Now, instead of my working 14 to 15 days a month, I now only work 9 or 10, all because HR wanted to be assholes. They get what they asked for. And that's the end of today's video. If you all enjoyed the stories I had for you, remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. And I will see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.